Oh, what's good, LC? Oh, we in there. What's good, everybody?
Oh, hey, Brianna. I know
What's
you.
good, Brianna? Welcome and congratulations. Hopefully you guys already started your application.
Yeah, hey, everyone. Thanks for joining us this evening. My name is Charli. So we'll be spending our time together focused on three key goals. One is we want you all to leave this convo like super pumped and hyped to like finish your application and join the Elevate community. Two, we want to share some investment readiness tips. Really, Darren sharing some of his experiences and stories that can really add some color to like what it looks like in the journey of like attracting capital. And the third goal is to really just answer any questions around the application and to provide some clarity on how to make sure you can submit the best application possible. So to get us there, our agenda is consisting of a welcome. So we'll go around and all introduce ourselves. We'll talk about and really define investment readiness, then shift to like, what are some tips to get investment ready? Then we'll provide some background on like, why does Elevar exist? What is it? And then we'll get really into the details and the tactics of like what's in the application. And then we'll close out with time for you to ask any questions that you have. And then basically, hopefully you all will make sure one of your next steps is to finish your application. So I'm a St. Louis native, born and raised, grew up on the north side of St. Louis, still live over there. So my background has really been in education, policy, and entrepreneurship, specifically social entrepreneurship. So I came home when, like, right after I finished my undergraduate studies. So I taught in the classroom, and at that time it was a real culture shock for me to get reacclimated to home because I had just left the rural part of Texas where cows were walking past. Here in St. Louis, crime was at an all-time high. And so that really pushed me to think about what was my role beyond the classroom. So my second year in the classroom started an educational access and leadership development organization called Inspire STL. It started off as 4 volunteers and grew that to like 11 full-time team members, and we ended up supporting hundreds of scholars for middle school through college completion. Having some really cool successes, so things like 100% high school graduation, college enrollment rates, and a whole host of other success metrics. And then we merged with a larger organization. And then at that point, I transitioned, was thinking about what's next, and that's when the idea for WePower emerged when talking to friends. And I was gearing up to launch WePower and connected with some folks who I was hoping to be partners for Ferguson, and I ended up getting recruited to serve as their executive director. So from 2017 to 2018, I served as the interim leader of a startup called Forward the Ferguson to really advance digital equity and get policies and laws changed in our region. So yeah, I'm here at WePower. We're a year and like a few months old, and we really hit the ground running. So right now we're focused a lot on policy advocacy. We've started to focus significantly on entrepreneurship because we believe there's a key responsibility to really activate WePower to build economic and political power, and we see entrepreneurship as a key tool for building economic power with Black Latinx communities. So that's me, and I'll pass it back to you, Darren.
Yeah. Okay. So Darren Jackson. So I'll just try and summarize pretty quick. I've been in the entrepreneurship scene for the past 10 years now officially. I started actually as a teenager when I first started my first program. That program turned into actually a social venture. So we went from helping specifically men in St. Louis, ages 16 to 35, find employment, get access to housing, reconnect with their families, all kinds of different things. Mainly guys getting out of prison, but also some guys who were just trying to find their direction in life. And I first started my first social venture, which was something called Hire St. Louis. It's still around. And we hire hundreds of men, specifically now women, from the St. Louis area to employ for different jobs, all the way from industrial type jobs to warehouse jobs to anyway, all around different sectors. And I went from there and I started another business and learned a lot through raising capital. And then I started an organization called Loop, where we teach kids how to code. From there, we raised a lot of money to basically like teach kids all around from city to county how to code. We brought on a lot of customers from the county who supported kids in the city. For every kid who registered to sign up to code, we sponsored a kid to learn how to code for free. Then we started a company called All Black Creatives, which is more of a media company, where we partnered with companies like Facebook and Instagram, and Bumble, and organizations all across Google and YouTube, all across the country, to help get Black and Latinx entrepreneurs, or creatives specifically, entrepreneurs, to get jobs in some of the major tech companies. Then I got connected to Charli, and I was like, oh my God, I love what you guys are doing. So they welcomed me into the We Power family, and I've been working with them since January, I guess, on working on this program to say, like, what does it look like for all of us to bring together our resources and our connections to reinvest back into the community. Really, like, my passion is like trying to see what it looks like to create access to opportunities, connections, community, for other entrepreneurs of color. So whenever I got connected with Charli and We Power, I was like, wow. During the time I was looking for something that existed that was like this, I never had access to an accelerator or incubator before. And typically, whenever you do find an accelerator or incubator, it's kind of like full of white men. And so I was like, man, is there something that like isn't full of white men? And actually during the time, like, so Charli was actually working on it, and I thought it was like, I already had known her from a lot of her past work as well, and have like a ton of respect for her. You guys are really lucky to be under a program that she's starting. And so I really was just like, yo, what would it look like to come alongside and collaborate to like help build this program? So that's where I am. That's how I got in here. And really grateful to be a part of We Power and to see kind of the investment that they've been able to put in all around. Really, it's a holistic approach to addressing a lot of issues that people like really probably me and Charli could have used back in the day.
Yep.
And so it's really cool to kind of come together now and collaborate.
Cool. Nice to meet you, Darren.
Thanks, Charli.
So for context, the reason why we're focusing so heavily on investment readiness is because we did a lot of listening to entrepreneurs at the beginning of this year. We collected feedback from a little over 100 folks across St. Louis this spring. And the number one thing that was cited as a challenge was access to capital. And so we're trying to be responsive to both need and opportunity, which is why there's this huge emphasis on this concept of investment readiness. So really accessing capital is about being investment ready. However, there is no universal consensus on what investment readiness is, which creates all this space for like bias and subjectivity. And one of the reasons why the entrepreneurship ecosystem is so male and pale. However, we believe that is not acceptable. So we were able to find a partner who's working to solve this, and that's Village Capital. So Village Capital has developed 8 core competencies that we also believe are the keys to impact, the keys and components that impact investment readiness. So there's team, problem and vision, value proposition, product, market, business model, scale, and investor exit. And there's key questions you want to be able to ask yourself and answer clearly in order to say, yes, I'm on the path towards being investment ready. So when thinking about your team, an investor wants to know who is on your team, what do they bring to the table, and how are they going to meet the needs of your company as it works to grow? The problem and vision is really diving into understanding what problem are you trying to solve, how do we know this is actually a problem, and then what is your vision to address this problem? The value proposition is basically saying, like, what is unique about your solution to this problem? The product is essentially what product, service are you offering that solves this, and is there any evidence that this product or service actually works? The market piece is basically saying, if you could describe your ideal and target customer, who are they? Do you know much about them in detail? And then how do you know this problem and your product and solution really meets the need of that target market? The business model is essentially, how do you make money? So you have a product, you have a service, have you figure out the projections, the price points that are really going to shift you from having a product to generating revenue to ultimately being profitable. And so a revenue model or a business model could range from a subscription to making money off of ads to like selling your product. And the scale piece is, investors want to see, is your company on track to scale significantly, so they have an increased opportunity to get a return. And then for you, thinking about, is my company on track to scale or have capacity to scale so that I can achieve greater impact in my community and align to my vision? And the investor exit piece is really thinking about, when you access capital, that capital usually has some expectations. So what strategy is in place to make sure that you can get a return for your investor, and to make sure that not only are you making money, but the investor gets money as well.
Yo, so when it comes to scale and exiting, so like on the scale aspect, it's not always, a lot of times people get really intimidated by that. They look at, typically what people look at, investors look at when it comes to scaling is, do you have $1 billion or more addressable market? And when they say $1 billion or more, it's kind of just saying like, is there enough that if I were to invest into this, I could get 10x on my investment, is kind of what people are hoping for. But scale isn't always about how many people, but it's specifically, so it's not always necessarily, it is, well, to Charlie's point, it is there 5 million people? Is there 5 billion people, potential customers? But it's also a lot of times, so for instance, like for Estrella, for instance, or both of you guys have food companies. And so sometimes it's more about the upsell than it is the amount of people that you're selling it to. So it doesn't necessarily have to be 5 million people, but let's say if you're selling black beans, you have a potential to start introducing brown, like a different type of bean, refried beans or whatever, prepackaged refried beans or something like that. So being able to prove that you can hit $1 billion or more addressable market, not necessarily just the amount of people, which that's really extremely helpful. But if you can't prove that you can get that amount of people, if you can prove that you can upsell your customers with multiple products, you might not be able to sell to tomato. I'm just using, for example, 5 billion tomatoes to 5 billion people, but you may have 5 million people who you're able to sell 1,000 products.
So we talked about what investment readiness is, but why does it matter? So earlier I talked about access to capital being the #1 challenge from the folks we surveyed, and like this stat, I think, just further affirms the urgency around the fact that we're not providing capital to folks who have vast potential but continue to get overlooked and underestimated. So as you see on that slide, only 1% of startup financing in 2016 went to African American and Latinx founders. Like, that is astounding. The fact that 99%, and this is billions of dollars, are going to quite often white men. And we know that that isn't necessarily reflective of all the genius and creativity that exists across our communities. Another thing to consider is 81% of funding usually comes from like your personal net worth and family and friends. And that is often not necessarily the case for folks who look like us. And so that often explains why the makeup of the entrepreneurs we see is overwhelmingly white, older, and male, or as some folks say, male and pale. I already spoke to this stat, so we listened, and this was cited as a challenge, so we really want to speak to the importance of investment readiness. So while there are clear challenges, the opportunity is even greater. If we invest in more Black and Latinx entrepreneurs, we would be generating $300 billion more across the country, creating 9 million more jobs. So there is both this moral and economic case for really focusing on Black and Latinx entrepreneurs. So that leads us to like tips on like, all right, I understand what investment readiness is. I understand why it matters, but like, how do I get investment ready? So generally speaking, and this is like a shameless plug, but it also really isn't. We have intentionally designed the application to Elevate Elevar to really push people to think about the things that really make them investment ready. And so if you look at our application guide and if you look at the application, it's divided into those 8 sections that are competencies for being investment ready. So even if you decide not to apply, completing those questions with a partner, advisor, with WePower, we'll have some application help nights, will help you develop clear answers to that will challenge you to think about things that will make you investment ready.
I think everybody, especially if you've never done this before, but even if you've done it before, I plan on doing it. I think that it's really helpful to actually go through the application process regardless of where you feel like you are. I also think like it's important to know is like it's common for people of color, especially for us, and minorities in general. So then women. So if you're a double minority, it's like it's common for us to weed ourselves out of stuff. And I think it's really important in this process. Like one is so to my first point is doing that application will help you to understand where your business is and then where you need to go. So whether you're accepted or not, like you get to keep the application. Is so helpful just to go through the process. Like if you can't answer these questions, let's not say if you can't, you should just be able to answer these questions. And if you can't, I think that there's a lot of benefit for you to like go through this process just so you can have those answers so that you can feel confident like through that process.
So basically this kind of visualizes, if you look at the bottom, those are the 8 competencies. So thinking about team, problem and vision, investor exit. And then back to that concept of looking at this model, like Darren said, there's 9 levels. So there's the 8 competencies and there's 9 levels. And so looking at the Village Capital model, you want to be able to level up to a new level about every 3 to 6 months. So being laser focused on if level 1 is the founding team, making sure that I have the best founding team possible so that I can then focus on setting the strong vision. So I would say don't bite off more than you can chew, but figure out what level am I on, and then how do I go to that next level in the next 3 to 6 months. You can be a level 1 for team, and then you might be a level 5 for problem and vision, but essentially the goal is to always level up to elevate. And so our thought is, based on the Village Capital partnership and how they've worked with entrepreneurs, you should be able to level up or elevate to 1 to 2 levels every 3 to 6 months. So the first level is the founding team, and then the 9th level is an exit in sight. So you'll look at the competencies, and then you can evaluate yourself against these 9 levels. So like hustle to the resources. There's a lot of resources out here in terms of people, funding, and programs. So constantly having on your radar what are programs you can go to, who are people you should be connecting to, and really aligning who you connect to and what program you connect to. Thinking about, all right, how are these resources going to get me to level 2 and then get me to level 3? The second piece is like staying laser focused, which I said earlier, on elevating to the next level. So the goal is not for you to go from level 1 to level 9 overnight. This is like an iterative process that takes time. And so the more that you are laser focused, the more you'll start to see tangible results. And this third concept is like there is a tool called Abaca, and the link is right here. You can go to the website and actually take an assessment. And by the end of the assessment, it will tell you your level of investment readiness and also offer some tips and like a roadmap for how to level up or how to elevate.
So a few tips. So number 1, whenever it comes to raising capital, especially, so it's kind of difficult because in this specific group, We have people who are at different levels as far as like where you may be looking at raising capital. So some people are much earlier stage. Some people have already had a little bit of experience raising capital. And so it's a little different depending on what stage your company's in. That model that Charli showed that will be shared inside of the chat box will kind of like let you know what stage you're at. So it goes from like level 1 to level 9, right? With the village capital piece. That model, actually that diagram is really, that matrix, I guess, is really incredible at like letting you know what level your business is at, and what investors are looking for. So off jump, I'll go from like earlier stage companies, and then I can kind of talk about like a little bit like later stage, more developed companies as far as like just tips, and I'll try and keep it real short. So if you're like an early stage company, you're just getting started, or you're, at the very least, you're just getting started raising capital, one of the best possible things that you could do is start to develop relationships with people inside of the networks and developing collaborations with people who are already raising capital. So a huge piece is that investors look for is they really want to know that, like, especially when you're earlier stage, that you have the capacity to manage the resources that they're giving. So one kind of like tip or trick for people who are really earlier stage is find people who you can partner with, where whenever you're talking to some of these investors, you're not saying like, oh, I'm going to be able to manage all of like the execution isn't just off of me being able to take this and then invest it into my company, and then I'll make sure. A lot of I statements. Like the goal is to be able to point to, here's the strategic partners that I have in place. Like, it's when you're investing into me, you're investing into potentially these, and depending on the business that you have, it's like, here's who I'm partnered with, and this investment isn't just going to impact me. Here's how it's going to impact the community, and here's how we're going to manage this as a network of partners. And so whenever you're really earlier stage, like a lot of times for me at the very least, is I found ways to collaborate with other people so that we could raise capital together versus it being just one of us raising capital. Another huge piece is developing those relationships, and that's for everybody across the board. That's probably the number one thing is when it comes to like raising capital, a huge piece of it is like, there's a book called Raising Friends. So like kind of playing on the word like raising funds. And the idea is people, whenever you're raising capital from people who you have a relationship with, and as you're going out to expand your network, looking at places like Venture Cafe, and there's a number of networks out there, the regional or the Chamber of Commerce, the Black Chamber of Commerce, I think he said he's on here. As you're networking with these different organizations and these different communities, the benefit of being a part of these different communities is that as you begin to like network, you get to find out who's already kind of aligned with your vision and your mission. One thing that I did, so when I raised, for me, the first time I raised money, we raised $10,000 and we raised $50,000, and we went on to raise over $250,000. And all of it was actually from a network of people I was volunteering with. And it was pretty cool. That's my story. I'm not saying that story will work out for everyone, but the value of building relationships with individuals, whether it be volunteering or whether it be through networks like Venture Cafe, which I've had a ton of success. I know a lot of people who've had a lot of good success building relationships there. The benefit is that you find people who are like-minded with like values, and the hard thing is getting into a relationship with an investor that you guys don't align with each other overall. Like, so the money makes sense for you and the product makes sense for them, but the mission isn't really the same. And so it's really important to like find people who have the same mission, who have the same values, who have the same like-mindedness, so that as you guys are starting to build a relationship, there's like a statistic that says that like basically your relationship with your investor lasts longer than the average marriage in America, which isn't that high because there's a lot of like that. But anyway, but it is. So it's like you're getting into this relationship, and it's really, really, really important that you guys understand and that you guys are committed to longevity with each other, and that your missions and your morals are aligned. And another, I would say, like, if you're like more established, like you already got your business off the ground and you're really working towards being a part of like accelerators, being a part of competitions, all of these things really they don't only add value to you as with the education aspect, because a lot of you guys maybe you've already been through programs where you feel like, okay, cool, like I have the education, just give me the contacts. And a lot of times, whenever you've gotten to that stage where you feel comfortable with your business model, you feel comfortable with your team, you feel comfortable with your product, you feel comfortable that you understand the market, like all of these things, like you know that you're solving a problem, a huge, huge, huge piece of what people are looking for and what you should be hoping for is that when you partner with organizations like an accelerator or a pitch competition, is this brand value. Like, do more than you and just your family and friends value your business. There's more than just you and the handful of businesses that you got cool with in your community or inside of your city value what you're doing. So people really want to know is like, whenever Charli was talking about scaling means typically for an investor, whenever they're looking at like high growth markets, they want to know, do you have the ability to reach $1 billion market? And that doesn't just mean like, okay, do you have 1 billion people who you can sell a product to? Sometimes it just means, do you have multiple products? Like for instance, like I'll just call you out real quick, LC. You got like 5 different products, 10 different products. Like, do you have multiple products? Do you have the right pricing models? Do you have the right pricing structures? Are people willing to actually buy what you are offering? And if so, where are those people? And so a huge piece of being a part of accelerators and pitch competitions is to add validation, and that validation really comes in handy, like let's just say for lack of better words, whenever you're talking and you're pitching to an investor, you're saying like, hey, not only have we been able to produce a product, which is definitely is most important. I hope you guys really hold on to this. Is like we have customers. Nobody speaks louder than customers do. And then C, we've been able to partner with this organization that has been able to leverage their network and their community to also help us to grow our business. So it is really, really big a lot of times, especially for us as people of color, who a lot of times we don't have friends and family who have like capital to invest into us. Like a lot of the alternatives and basically white men, as Charli was saying, like with the statistics, like they have a lot of that money comes from friends and families and inheritances, and a lot of us don't have access to that. And so it's really important to for us to kind of like really come together in a community. And so part of the benefit of like an accelerator, incubators, all these different types of programs, pitch competitions, is that it really does establish that level of community and that level of network that puts us in the right position to A, access capital, B, access community, and C, access connections. So I'll say that for now. I feel like I have a lot more to say, but for the sake of time, I'll pass it to Charli.
And I'll just add 2 more things. I think back to that point that Darren made about relationships, those are so critical. And some of your greatest ways to build a pipeline of funders and investors are forming mentorship relationships. Often mentors, as they see you grow and learn, they're going to be bought into your evolution and then but they will shift from not just being a mentor, but also an investor. So One like simple saying is to get money, ask for advice, and to get advice, ask for money. So for example, when I started Inspire STL, I had a meeting with two folks in St. Louis who are super high capacity, but also just really business savvy. And I had a list of questions I wanted to ask them. I had no intention of asking them for money. And I asked these questions, took diligent notes, and was like really internalizing what they had to say. By the end of that meeting, it was like a 60 or 90-minute meeting. They handed me a $5,000 check that I had no expectation was coming my way. But back to that saying, I can't say how often that has panned out in my journey of raising dollars. Another example, I had a team of mentors, and for a year I worked with them. I met with them monthly. And I basically came every time with a challenge statement, and I asked them for like critical feedback on how I could tackle this challenge. And by the end of that year, one of those mentors who I had no intention of getting money from ended up becoming a multi-year funder to other folks in his network that also help me raise funds. So leveraging the power of relationships and really tapping into people's wisdom and knowledge can often transition into them becoming investors. And now we'll get to like why Elevate and like what is Elevate. So basically we elevate companies that elevate communities through supporting the companies with growing quickly and as much as possible so they can create living wage jobs, spark economic development, and really drive towards shared power. Because we see so often business leaders being the decision makers and things happening to communities instead of with communities. So when we say accelerator, basically for us, an accelerator is a program that supports early stage companies that are really focused on growth. And accelerators provide education, mentorship, and often financing. They're for a fixed period of time, and it's usually a cohort of companies versus like one company here and there. And it's really about rapid growth and change over that fixed amount of time. And for us, that fixed amount of time is 6 months. So what do we provide? We provide three sort of domains of opportunities: curriculum, like Darren said, connections, and capital. The curriculum is focused on two major things: getting investment ready, and then the other thing is marketing and branding, because we heard in our surveying and listening to entrepreneurs that acquiring customers and having a strong brand has been a big barrier to growing the company. And so we're partnering up with Slam. They are a branding firm that works across the country and have a deep expertise and basically leveraging marketing and branding to attract customers. So they will be Village Capital's investment readiness curriculum, and Slam's marketing, branding, customer acquisition curriculum will be the anchor of what we do. The connections piece is really sort of unlimited, but we provide every company with access to a business coach who will check in with you as the entrepreneur team twice per month. It'll be goal setting, action planning, problem solving, and figuring out what barriers are holding me back from elevating my company to the next level. You'll have monthly meetings with a mentor team, and then also access to subject matter experts. So office hours at no cost, where you get to connect with a lawyer if you need to. You connect with an accountant if you need to, an HR professional, the marketing and branding team at Slam. And then you get access to a whole host of things based on your various needs. We are covering wellness sessions for each entrepreneur that chooses to opt in. So we know being an entrepreneur is super exhausting, super challenging, and there's all these like emotional and social emotional things that sort of can harm our well-being. And so we acknowledge that, we honor that, and we have basically budget to make sure that if someone wants to have someone they talk to about their social emotional well-being and navigating trauma, you are able to access once or twice per month those personal wellness coaching sessions. And the capital piece, which we know is critical, we plan to provide seed funding. And then I would say more importantly, the seed funding only gets you so far. We want to get you connected and ready to have meaningful conversations with other folks who can provide you with access to capital. We cover office space, we cover your accounting services, and we cover the cost for your company to develop an individualized marketing and branding strategy. And I think the piece that's not on here, but I think Darren talks about it really well, is the power of community. So we know all too often, very rarely is there a space for Black and Latinx founders to exist, to bring their full selves, and to really be vulnerable about the challenges of being an entrepreneur and being an entrepreneur of color. And so we want this to be an experience where the cohort feels like a family that can support one another and grow together. Our key partner for this is Village Capital. They are an international venture capital fund and accelerator that has really great success in supporting underrepresented entrepreneurs with scaling their company and creating real impact. So this snapshot, it just kind of gives you an idea of how much more successful companies are that go through the Village Capital curriculum, which we will be offering to all members of the first cohort. The application, so if you go to our website, you will get about a handful of yes or no questions. And basically, once you complete those questions, you will get an email immediately that tells you to have a look at the Elevate Elevar full application. So once you get that email, that's when it's time for you to create your account so that you can complete the full application. And the other piece that we want to think about there are several application sections. The first one is a very straightforward, mainly yes or no. The second one is the applicant profile. So it's really making sure we understand you as an entrepreneur and your team. And then the third part of the application are those 8 competencies around investment readiness that we talked about earlier. So we'll have a few questions asking about your product, problem and vision, value prop, team, market, business model, scale, and investor exit. And again, we thought about creating this application to really support you, whether you get into the accelerator or not. The last sections are really us understanding if your company and you as an entrepreneur have shared values with WePower, and we are totally committed to community-led change and really making sure the community has the power to lead the change they want to see, versus businesses coming in and doing more harm than good to communities.
Yeah.
All right, so this is just a quick snapshot of like questions that are on the application, just to get you thinking about, like, are you ready to answer these questions or are you not? And if not, you should come to our application help night because we can work with you on answering these questions.
When it comes to really delivering to your customers, you're also considering, you don't want to give too much attention to your competitors, but you do want to know what your customers are currently being offered, or we'll call it your current market options. And then you want to be able to say, what is unique or innovative about the product that you're offering, or the way that you're offering the product to the company that you are, or to the customer, sorry. And then, so the next question is, describe your impact. So if your company is successful, how would the world be different? And what's important with that is that is the answer for scale. Isn't just, the difference between a startup and a small business typically, and I don't mean to be divisive because we love and need small businesses, and but a little bit of the difference between the startup and a small business is typically small businesses kind of look at directly, hey, how can we improve on what currently exists and offer a product directly to our community, where startups are constantly entrepreneurs. So small businesses, let's say the model already exists and you're just kind of like replicating the model, where a startup like your companies, the question is how is the world different when you enter the game? How is the world different when you enter into the market? What shifts with the target demographic that you're trying to reach? How are lives changed? How are communities changed because your business is in the world?
This piece here is basically a checklist. Before you press submit, you and make sure you can say yes or check off each of these bullets. So did you answer all of the eligibility questions? Did you spend a substantial amount of time developing quality responses to the questions? Did you check for errors and make sure you have punctuation and grammar? Or have someone else check it for you? Remember, this is a partnership process, so don't go down this path alone. Did you answer all of the required questions? And then this piece, there is a survey by Galley. It's included in the application and also linked in the application guide. This has to be completed for your application to be completed. And if you complete the full application and including this Galley survey, whether you get accepted into the accelerator or not, you will be considered for a $1,500 grant to support your company. And the last recommendation is, did I just color? The last recommendation, right there, that's random. The last recommendation is to download your application as proof of completion, just in case there are technical difficulties. And then also, because you can have the responses and constantly reference those when you're working to elevate to the next level. So we'll stop there, and then if you have any questions for Darren and I, feel free to shout them out.
Yeah. Hello, everybody. My name is Shulkendi, and I'm the co-founder and CEO at Forefront.
I got it right here. She said, how much is the funding? And then she asked, when does the program start? And then she said, is there a grant or a convertible note that is basically invested into for like the graduates?
Cool. You want me to take, so in terms of funding, just to be fully transparent, we're still fundraising that seed dollar that we want to provide to companies. We have done some research on the amount of funding that is needed to scale a company and our start a company, and that's $30,000. So our big goal is to be able to provide each company with $30K. We don't know how close we're going to get to that goal for the first round, but that's what we're working really, really hard towards being able to do. In terms of the type of funding, we envision this being a revenue share. And so these are investments where we have thought a lot around how do we make sure this is a win-win, so that as companies and as entrepreneurs, you're not feeling captive by this like investor relationship. And so revenue share basically means we don't make money unless you make money, and you don't have to pay us the money back. And the sort of amount and sort of terms really varies based on the type of company. And then, yeah, that answers that question. So no, it's not a grant. So thank you for those questions. Those are really important. Any other questions folks have out there?
So to me and we started the application process, and we came across an answer because we haven't gotten that far in the process or with the business rather. And you may have talked about this, but we were having some connectivity issues, so I apologize if you did. How would you go about answering those questions, or how do you suggest that we go about answering those questions?
So basically,
more so, like, I think one of the questions was like, oh, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. I want to hear that example question.
The question was asking about how much revenue you've brought in, or how much do you think you'll bring in, something along those.
Yeah, so based on my understanding of your company, I think you are positioned to answer those questions. You are up and running. We're not looking for a perfect answer, so we're not expecting someone to say my revenue has been $1 million. You can be transparent, and like if your revenue is $0, then we'll take that and we'll take that into consideration. But we won't let a single like open-ended question determine if you're the right fit or not. it's really about putting together the right cohort of companies. And so if the question is zero, I mean, if the answer is zero, that's fine. And like part of the goal of this application is for you to use this to be able to try and answer those questions through thought, some research with the tools we share, and spending time with us. And so that might mean you need to say, all right, my goal is to have 1,000 customers in 2020. So then maybe you need to do some like projections to say, all right, by 2020, our revenue will be this. So I would say use the questions as an opportunity to do some deep thinking and planning.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you.
Or is this the first time we were putting it together here in St. Louis, or?
Yeah, this is the first cohort in St. Louis. We are part of a national community. And so going back to that slide, using this model all across the country and across the world, really, these programs have been implemented in parts of Africa and parts of Colombia, all across the country in the United States, and they have demonstrated a lot of success. So we're taking a model and bringing it to St. Louis because we know it has worked elsewhere.
I congratulate you. Thank you. And thank you. St. Louis could use it.
Well, we hope you apply.
Thank you.
If accepted, if and when the application is accepted, and we are, when does the 6-month, I guess, process start? A 6-month training period starts?
Yep, that will start in January. So
okay.
After the holidays, so basically like mid-January. And then we'll end with a community pitch day to both funders and folks who live in like North St. Louis City, for them to learn about what you're doing and figure out ways to get plugged in to support you, whether it's as a customer, as a community member, or as a funder. And that will be in July.
Okay. And how many people are you guys accepting?
Our plan is to accept up to 10 companies.
Okay.
And it'll run twice a year, right, Charlie?
Yep, we're gonna see how exhausted we are after this first and then we might do 2 next year, but if not, we'll definitely start doing 2 cycles per year, like Darren said, starting in 2021.
Okay.
I had a question about the revenue. So are you asking for this year, or are you asking for previous years? Like, what was our revenue? Because the year hasn't ended yet. So do you want like mid-year, or does it even matter? Yeah,
the question is tailored to not have you have to answer like revenue by December. We specify it by honoring that like you're not going to know how much money you made.
Right.
So yeah, it's more so about history of revenue.
Okay. Thank you. Also, so you said that you do offer help, because it's like my first application with a program like this. So I do feel that I will need some assistance with the application. So when are those sessions going to be available to where you can like work together?
That's the perfect segue to next steps. So thank you. So some key dates. The application closes on Sunday, September 15th. September 4th, so next week, is that Wednesday? Next Wednesday, 6 to 8 p.m. at our office in Cortex, 20 South Sarah Street. You can come hang out with us, bring your laptop. We have laptops. We'll have dinner, and basically we'll be with you as you complete the application. We can answer any questions. And then also you can come back. So you can come both times or one time. The next one is on a Saturday, so trying to accommodate for people with different schedules is September 14th, 10 a.m. to 1 p.m.
One more thing. I was reading something in the email, and it was saying something like, I guess, you're going to have the aldermen's vote. Is that, I don't know if I read that right.
Oh, no. No, we're going to have the people vote.
Okay. I said something about aldermen's on there about the 22nd First Ward, something about they get a say so in it or something. Maybe
No, that won't be happening.
Okay.
We're going to have residents vote because we really want to put the decision making in the hands of everyday people who are impacted by businesses. So there's 3 rounds. The first round is the application that you should have access to, or will have access to soon. The second round is an interview with our selection committee, and then from there, the finalists will be presented to the community, and the community will vote to select the 10 companies that start in January.
Okay, cool, awesome.
Yeah.
How long do people have to complete the application? Just to make sure it's done right?
Yep, so they basically have a month. So the application closes on Sunday, September 15th at 11:59 p.m. Central Time.
Okay, cool.
And we will offer 2 work session days throughout the application window. So you can come to our office, we'll provide dinner, and you basically can work on your application here with us, and we'll also provide childcare if needed.
Oh, that's so awesome.
Wow. Okay. I like that.
That's dinner or lunch, because one of the sessions will be on Saturday.
Thanks, Antoine. I have one more thing, just a few more reminders. So some key dates. Application closes Sunday, September 15th. We will notify you on whether you made it to the interview round the week of September 30th. The interviews will be the week of October 14th. We will announce finalists in early November, and the community will vote mid-November. And then you will receive offer letters, if accepted, by very early December. For other opportunities that you would like to access, you might say, all right, I don't want to do Elevate this time, although we hope that's not the case. Darren emphasized the importance of hanging out at Venture Cafe. That's every Thursday, free, and you get to connect with all types of folks also committed to entrepreneurship and scaling companies. And we will also send this slide deck for you to check out as well. But this last line, I-10, has an ecosystem map, and it basically tells you about almost every entrepreneurship support organization in St. Louis. And so if you want to find out about other opportunities, you can go to this website to learn more. Oh, go ahead.
I just have a question. So when we go through the process, and maybe it's said somewhere in the documentation, is there a number that you all are looking for, like to be chosen after we go through the process?
Up to 10 companies. And then up to 10, one of the people on the team has to be the founder, and that founder has to identify as Black and/or Latinx. And then you can also have one other person with you if they're part of the founding team.
Okay. Thank you.
So we really, really, really appreciate you joining us this evening, and we can't wait for you all to apply, and we can hopefully elevate the companies you're founding and also the community in that process.
Thank you, Charli.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you, Darren.
Thank all y'all.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you guys. It's one of my favorite quotes. And yeah, no, I just feel like a lot of times as entrepreneurs, we're all trying these new things. And, you know, as much love and support that we want to get from everyone in our community or our family or out there in the world, a lot of times people can't see what we're trying to accomplish. So hopefully, as you guys are trying to fill out these applications, you don't, I know like one of the biggest challenges I've had is like weed myself out in the middle of a process because I don't know answers, or I feel like I'm not as qualified as I wish I would be before trying. And I would say is hopefully you guys are, you know, I just want to encourage you guys to go all the way through. And if nothing else, man, like filling out this application all the way through really does get you prepared, helps you to think through your business, and you don't have to be, and not to limit yourself because you feel like other people may not see the vision that you see. So.
Okay.
Right on. I received that message.
Hey. Cool.
Thank
All
you.
right, program, correct me if I'm wrong, Charli, like this isn't just a one-off thing. So like this is like a ongoing program. So like you applying, one, you get to apply again and again and again, like no matter if you're accepted in this cohort or not. And you being accepted or not isn't always necessarily based upon where your business is, but also the organization's ability to be able to support your business. So it's not like, if you're not accepted, it's not like, oh man, like I should have never applied, or I shouldn't apply, or whatever. It's like, yo, maybe it's like this first cohort, like the organization went in a space to business, and so the next time, you know, maybe there was a number of people who applied who are just like you, and now we're able to really support you because we had a few months to be able, 6 months to be able to figure out ways to support your organization. So there's a number of like reasons that I think you should apply just personally, outside of just because you may or may not be selected to be a part of the program. It's just extremely beneficial to go through the process. And then I'll say also, the last thing is to all the resources that are on WePower's website and that was just added into that chat are extremely beneficial. And a lot of people don't have access to those resources. And so I think, like, go download it, research it, allow it to take you on that spiral onto a train of research, and just continue to like look at new ways to improve and to grow your business. Because the resources that WePower is providing, like, was sourced between a team of people who've been spending months on trying to figure out resources specifically that cater to Black and Latinx entrepreneurs. And so, so I would say is like, spend as much time as you can reading over those resources. But again, I can't stress it enough, is you should totally apply, and if for no other reason, just for you, and do not weed yourself out. Like, don't weed yourself out of the process.
Thank you for that. And I think the other piece is like, even if it's not the right fit, there are other programs. So we will be sharing, if you let us, we'll pass on your information to other opportunities and organizations that can support you with scaling your company. And we are trying to be part of the ecosystem and the pipeline. And so we do have worked out a partnership where anyone who has completed Square One Bootcamp and anyone who has received a BOSSA grant, we will guarantee a spot for at least one person each time who is an alum of Square One or who has received a BOSSA grant, because those are two programs that can support you in getting ready for an accelerator like this. And so, yeah, that's it. And I'm going to pass it to Edgar.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. Can y'all hear me?
Yep.
Great. Hi. As Charli said, I am Edgar. And my job is to make sure that this process is as smooth as possible to support all entrepreneurs throughout their application and afterwards. And so I will make sure to send my phone number and my email through the chat, but it's also available on the website. So if you have any questions, please feel free to send me an email or call me or text, whatever works for you. And I'll be waiting to hear from everyone. So thank you, everyone. We hope to see all of you submit an application.
All right. Have a good night.
Good night, everybody.
Good night. Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in.